So, let's talk about character. Can anyone here draw a simple picture of character? I mean, so simple that they can draw it in 4 moves. Ponder that. We'll get back to it. Ever plucked an apple from a barrel at an orchard or supermarket? Deep color, nice firmness. You take a big bite out of it, and that's when you realize inside it's spoiled, darkened, maybe has a wormhole. Even worse, there's half a worm in it. That's right. But how could you know based on its appearance? They all looked good at first glance. The barrel surely didn't scream, "Hey, we're all rotten to the core in here." I bet you'll think twice before you ever grab any old apple out of a barrel again. You may not even go to that orchard or store again, right? So, what's that got to do with character development and the U.S. Army? Well, actually, everything. Because there's one thing we all know. Like an apple, it only takes one of us to spoil the reputation of the whole group. So, character matters. When members of the Army profession, both soldiers and Army civilians, violate moral principles, the Army values, our ethic, the American people lose confidence in us. And then we, in turn, lose confidence in each other and eventually the Army. So, all we have to do about character is get rid of the bad apples, right? Wrong. The Army already has a way of dealing with the occasional bad apple. We have a disciplinary system for individuals. But if we are truly going to develop character in the Army, well, then the barrel matters too. In fact, it's more critical than the apple, because if the barrel is bad, the worms spread even to the best apples. So, to continue our metaphor, the core challenge for the Army is... Love that pun, don't you? The core challenge for the Army is the organizational climate. So let's peel back that concept. Oh, too many puns. You've already got the seed of the idea. Sorry, I was just thinking that with each new crop of soldiers coming in... Okay, I'm done, sorry. So think about this. Compare 2 companies of soldiers, A and B. Both companies look good on the surface. However, Company A is by the book. They aren't flashy, but they have a professional climate, they take care of their people, and they get the mission done in the right way. Then you have Company B, who act like rock stars. Oh, they're extremely competent and committed, and they absolutely crush the competition at all costs. But they also have a climate that would make a rugby team blush. So have you ever had a situation where the leader had to choose one and said, "I want Company B. They'll take that hill in no time and with great force, but do not let them anywhere near my children ever." Really? So just how much collateral damage and loss of life are you willing to tolerate? See, character is not the ends justify the means. That is not good character. Not the character that America is looking for, nor is the U.S. Army. Because if Company B is rewarded in their character deficiency, then it won't be long before the whole Army struggles to shake off their reputation. Let's get really serious for a minute. Have you seen the movie Fury? Brad Pitt's character, Sergeant Collier, is a battle-hardened NCO in World War II. He promised his tank crew that he'd get them home alive. And he has done that for 3 years, prodding his crew to kill as many Germans as they can. But, spoiler alert, he loses his main gunner, who is replaced by a green clerk just out of basic training. After a major engagement, Collier captures a lone German prisoner. To break his new gunner into the brutal hardships of war, Collier demands that the prisoner be shot by the newbie, who refuses. So, Collier puts a headlock on this young man and a pistol in his hand. Collier wraps his grip on the young man's trigger finger and shoots the prisoner. The other crew members cheer and welcome the newbie as one of their own. Is Sergeant Collier competent? For 3 years, he has been. Is he committed to keeping his men alive? Absolutely. But does he have character? Army character? Or is he the bad apple? Regardless, his men have bought into the climate that Collier has set.
It's just a movie.
True, it is just a movie. But it happens in real life too. Ever see the independent documentary The Kill Team? I highly recommend it if you want to see how climate gets corrupted. It tells the real story of a situation that occurred in Afghanistan. Private Winfield knew his platoon was committing heinous war crimes under the leadership of Staff Sergeant Gibbs, the one you followed if you wanted to survive the war. But Winfield's life was threatened by Gibbs and the rest of the team if he ever reported them. His officers ignored his pleas and that of his father, who raised the alarm stateside. It sounds like fury, and Staff Sergeant Gibbs is the bad apple. Private Winfield tries to be a good apple, but the climate of his unit, the barrel, presents risk. Deadly risk in doing the right thing. So, does character matter? Absolutely. But how do you look inside the person to find it? To measure and develop it? When you talk about the true nature of someone, how do you draw a conclusion as to their character? Well, every day we make decisions. We take actions, all of which can be observed as to whether those decisions adhere to the Army ethic. Consequently, we can counsel Army professionals to improve their ethical reasoning and decision-making once we know what we are looking for.
What is the Army ethic?
What's the Army ethic? That is a great question. You probably heard the phrase, make sure your compass points to true north. Well, the Army ethic is the heart of the Army. It's our true north, our ethical code. It includes the moral principles and values that guide our decisions and actions. In order to measure and develop character, you have to have a standard, and this is ours. This is the Army ethic. So now we know what we're looking for when it comes to character.
Well, how do you develop it?
How do you develop that? That's another great question. We can't just write an ethic, take an oath, and order people to follow it. Like the examples of Company B, Fury, and the Kill Team, people may comply on the surface, but not all will be committed to doing the right thing in an unethical climate. We must intentionally develop character along with competence and commitment as an integral part of our leadership development strategy. We can't leave it to chance. It appears that ethical behavior, character, hates a vacuum. So in the absence of character, the climate gets filled by all sorts of other codes, creeds, and loyalties. Because ultimately, this all comes down to trust. It's the bedrock of our profession. The Army's motto is, "This will defend." Defend what?
The Constitution.
Right, the Constitution of the United States. It's why the Army exists. To defend America, its values, people, and interests. When we accomplish the mission in the right way, effectively, efficiently, and ethically, we build trust with the American people. Which leads to mission command. In combat, we trust that the soldier to our right and left has our back. But also on an increasingly dispersed and complex battlefield, leaders have to trust that subordinates will carry out their intent with disciplined initiative while accepting prudent risk. Risk. A very important word. It's not enough to be competent and committed. Your leaders have to trust you. Likewise, subordinates must trust that leaders will underwrite their mistakes made with honest intent. There's no room for a bad apple here, and there's definitely no room for a bad barrel either. Developing character requires the deliberate alignment of culture, climate, and identity. The Army as an institution must value character within its culture at the same level as competence and commitment. Army organizations must create professional climates in which character is supported and can thrive. And individuals, leaders, and followers must share an identity as trusted Army professionals who live by and uphold the Army ethic. This is the Army's framework for character development. These are the three spheres that impact character: identity, climate, and culture. Here's the bottom line. Leaders at each level have responsibilities to develop character in themselves and others by positively influencing identity, climate, and culture. The spheres are interdependent and mutually supporting. There are no loners here, no islands out there on the horizon. Sorry, Madison Avenue, but contrary to what you may have heard, we're no longer an army of one. So think of this like playing Twister. You know, with the mat that has all the colored dots and you have to have your hands and feet on all the corresponding colors, except you're not all tangled up. You're lined up exactly where you need to be. And that's because, as an Army professional, we exist in all three spheres simultaneously. When you first start out in your profession, your feet are firmly planted in the individual area. You are both a direct leader and follower with a great deal of influence in developing a shared identity in this thing called the Army. You focus on setting the right example by upholding the Army ethic with your decisions, actions, coaching, counseling, and mentoring others to do the same. But you also have one hand in the organization and one in the institution. You have less influence than more senior leaders, but you contribute to climate through your example and by rejecting and reporting the influences of those who would subvert our shared values. You are always affected by the culture of the Army, but every once in a while you get to point out what is right and wrong in the culture through surveys, focus groups, and engagements with senior leaders. As you become a mid-grade leader, your feet shift to the organization. Now your greatest influence is on climate, and you set a professional atmosphere where all are inspired and expected to live by and uphold the Army ethic in the exercise of mission command. You certify your subordinates through education, training, experience, thereby ensuring the unit is ready for its mission. Of course, you still have a hand in developing the shared identity of individuals, but now your other hand has increased access in the institution, influencing Army culture through the advice you provide senior leaders. And with hard work and good fortune, let's say you become a strategic leader in the Army. Now your feet shift to the institution. This is where you have the greatest influence on building a culture of trust within the Army. You make decisions and take actions that affect the whole system. So if you set policies in place that recruit the wrong people or reward and advance results over character, it breaks down trust and breeds cynicism. This is where you are extended the most. With your feet over there, you have one hand here in the climate of the organization you lead, and the other hand is over here developing the identity of yourself and others. However, now your example is seen by all. With greater access, power, and influence comes greater responsibility to be a steward of the Army profession.
But I just break and kill things.
So you're in Company B, right? But not so fast. I know when the bullets start flying, I can't kill the enemy with character. But you are so much more than a person who kills people and breaks things. No doubt the Army must get results. The nation depends on us to win, but in the right way. Yeah. Sometimes we have to take lives or break things. But that's exactly why we have to have the character to understand why we fight. We have to aspire to honorable service, to be worthy of the sacred trust given to us by the American people. Face it. without a true north, without character, how many of us could become Staff Sergeant Gibbs in Afghanistan? Without a culture of trust, professional climate, and shared identity, how many Sergeant Colliers will we produce? But this isn't only about combat and the big lapses that make the news. It's also about everyday life in the Army, on and off duty, even when no one is looking. This is about the leader who says, just get it done, I don't need to know how you did it, and the next day, Company B has Company A's doors on its Humvees. This is about the soldier, or the Army civilian, who complies with the Army ethic on duty, but then lives a completely different life on social media off duty. 3 C's, everybody. Competence, commitment, character. It's not enough to be competent. Staff Sergeant Gibbs in the kill team was more than competent. It's not enough to be committed. When the bullets start flying, we will fight for the men and women around us. This is about character. We must deliberately develop it in a way that our culture, climate, and identity are aligned. Because when they aren't, you get a farmer's market, an institution that attracts and rewards bad apples, or a barrel, an organization that spoils the good ones. Either way, it leads to a lack of trust. But when all 3 spheres are aligned with the Army ethic as our true north, then we as Army professionals develop and demonstrate character along with competence and commitment, and the outcome is trust. I asked at the beginning if anyone here could draw a simple picture of character in 4 moves. Let me show you. This is character. Because that's not a box, it's a mirror. And we need to look into it every day. As a direct leader or follower, ask, do my words match my deeds? Do I live by the Army ethic? As an organizational leader, ask, is our climate professional? Does it uphold the Army ethic and the exercise of mission command? As a strategic steward, ask, does our profession promote a culture of trust? Does our system reward character along with competence and commitment? Our profession depends on the answer to all these questions being a resounding yes. So, we've talked about character. Now, let's go look in the mirror and find it.